Hey, it's Wednesday, May 12th and Thursday, May 13th. We're going to finish out. We're going to read, in theory, unless something horrible happens, all of chapter 7, take a break, and then all of chapter 8. So then my goal is for the quiz coming up on Friday, I will have read all of 5, all of 7, all of 8. You only had to read chapter 6 on your own. And we'll see how well you do. Which leaves us just 9, 10, and 11 left for next week. And each of those chapters are like 9 or 10 pages each. They are not very long. And then we're done because we are finishing out the book. We're going to talk about end of book on Monday for you guys, Tuesday for the other kids. Excuse me. And then my goal is we're going to spend half the class period talking, take a break, and then give you guys the rest of the time to take tests. And then hopefully you'll be done as far as big assignments for my class as of Monday. You do still have Friday e-learning next week, but it's not a major thing. As far as big things go, as long as you've read, then you should be good to go. For those of you who have not read, you actually have time. I'm going to give you like a week to take the test if need be. So for those of you who are still wanting to do well and you want to go back and read to try and increase grade, my goal is to make that a thing that's possible. Did this, go those kids, still bragging about them because they're impressive.
It's frozen.
Oh my goodness, it's just you guys.
You got to go back.
Actually, don't have to go back. You can't control me. And we have the kids there. We sold this one for the kids at home. I have now changed the price on the fruit snacks because apparently kids don't like expired food. But it didn't kill anyone yet. And if it does kill someone, then I have one less student. We covered this. We have the books. Well, that is how math works. Let's see. Then those of you who don't want to read on your own, I did upload the audiobooks. And then now we get to go to Learning Bits. Learning Bits. I know who likes it. I sent this out on Remind for those of you who want to use it as far as the test and stuff like that. Hopefully it helps. If not, then ignore it like you do most of us. You're good to go. Hi, Jerry. Hippie House, so we covered that. That's been the Straw Furs. That was Mike and Connie. I added a picture of people playing pool. I should have had it up there for you guys yesterday because the Texans showing up and the whole hustling. And so from there, I thought it was fairly fun. And where Charlie died? Yes, he's dead. And Charlie got the extra hole in his head, which did not help him with breathing. Then we got to the brass knuckly bits. Chapter 6, the one that you guys had to read. I want to run through and help you guys with things in a second. For one, they talk about LSD in there, which is acid. It's the drug that makes you get all hallucinating. We're going to talk more about the hippie house today because we're going to go back and have a scene there. And we're going to talk about the people who are on drugs and having some issues. Cruising on the Ribbon, which is where they go do the flirty in the cars and do the whole driving back and forth. And on the Ribbon, that's when they talk about the girls in the orange Camaro that flirted with Eminem and freaked him out. That would be the orange Camaro. And then the bench seats, in case you were unfamiliar with how bench seats work, it said all 4 of them sat in the front seats. It was Brian was driving, Eminem was hanging out the window, and then I think Kathy and Mark were in the middle. It's because of this big long seat. So all 4 of them could sit in the front seat area. Then we're going to talk about the scene with the boys that were in the yellow Corvette when they said the really nasty thing, and then Mark gets out and punches them in the face. Same thing. And then they created a TikTok dance about it. And then to the drive, same way. The drive-in restaurant, and that's when they get out, and we're going to talk about Eminem. So let me go see them there. Let's do quick rewindy bits. So prior to his death, why does why does Charlie no longer have to work? There you go. Because he talks about his record and the fact that he set. And now, of course, we have no idea if he was telling the truth or not because he's no longer with us. But that was Lisa's story. Speaking of which, what happens to Charlie? And that was from the Texans. Save them and stuff like that. So the scene in chapter 6 when they're cruising, and that was that all of a sudden you have these socials pull up in a Corvette next to them. This is Mark, Brian, Eminem, and Kathy. And the boys in the Corvette say like a really nasty thing to Kathy, who's sitting there. And that's when Mark suddenly jumps out, runs around the car, goes over to the Corvette, and just starts punching the guy through the window, and then runs back, jumps in the car, and they take off and pull away. And Kathy goes, "Whoa, why would you do something like that?" He goes, "Listen, they hit us first because they said a really horrible, nasty thing about her." He's like, "I couldn't hit them back the same way because if I did, it would hurt you. Because if I turned around and said like a whole bunch of curse words and made fun of their mom, you would hear it, and that becomes an insult to you. So I wanted to hurt them without hurting you. And the only way to do that was to punch them. But of course, that's not the way she sees it. She's like, you're just a violent, thuggy person. But his thing was he was trying to be nice. Mark was attempting to be a good person and not insult Kathy by saying things out loud. So the idea that you can get hit without using your fists. They got hit with words. He got hit using fisty bits. Then Eminem, oh, I forgot to ask. Eminem and his dad, they're fighting. Why do Eminem and his dad fight? So this goes back to the whole, you guys have some of you guys have somewhat shaggy-ish hair, and I don't know if your parents harass you about it or not. But for a long time, it's been a thing where parents, like, especially more the boy people than the girl people, be like, you need to cut your hair, and they give him a hard time. Same thing with Eminem. His dad keeps giving him a hard time, saying, you need to cut your hair and look respectable. He's like, what's it matter? It's just hair. But apparently that's always the thing that parents and kids fight about, is stuff like hair and clothing. And apparently Eminem is failing in class. Was it PE? Was it math? PE, and yeah, and that's why he's giving a hard time, because apparently Eminem does not care about that stuff at all. And so, yeah, so he's failing those things. So while they're cruising up and down the strip, what does Eminem do? That's when he runs away. And how old is he?
13.
And so he just gets out and he's like, I'm out. And they're like, where are you going? He's like, no, I'm out. He's like, I'm not coming home. He's like, I'm done getting yelled at. I'm running away. And he just leaves at 13. And they get out and try to find him, but apparently he's gone. And that's where we're going to pick up here today. He did himself. He did himself. And this is where we get to the whole Mark and Brian at the beginning of the book. Best friends, have been forever, pretty much brothers. Everything is perfect. But as it's going along, you learn that friendships go different directions. And here the fact that Mark and Brian used to be best friends, but Brian and Mark are now finding different things important. Brian's also hanging out with a chick, which for a lot of you, as you start getting older, you're going to have friends in your friend group who start dating. And when that happens, whether you're dude or chick, it becomes a wedge in your friendship, because they're going to want to spend time with this other person and not with you. And that's what happens here with Mark and Brian, is it starts separating them. It becomes that third wheel issue is a thing. And so here's the idea that now that becomes, Mark does feel like a third wheel, which makes him angry. He's like, we've been best friends forever. And now all of a sudden you care about her more than me. And Brian's like, well, she understands me and you don't. And it becomes that issue. So now I get to start reading to you. Page 104. They're both fairly short chapters. And starting in chapter 6, actually, no, starting in chapter 5, there is a major thing that happens in every chapter from here on out. Chapter 5, Charlie got shot. Chapter 6, Eminem runs away. Chapter 7, you're going to find out. You cannot, because they're going to hear about it in a second. I did forget the thing with Angela. She is going to show up again in this one. Last we saw Angela was with the whole smash you on the head bottle thing. And that's where the whole, does Mark forgive people well? And Mark is the one that got hurt. So who does Mark need to get revenge on? That's what, now here's the problem. Angela's a girl. So Mark does not feel that you can't just go punch her because she's a girl. But how do you get proper revenge for what she did if you don't feel you can, again, punch her or shoot her is wrong. So that's where he's going to get creative. You'll just wait and find out. Page 104, the page where kids don't yell at me quite as much. I went with Kathy to break the news about Eminem to her parents and to explain why we were so late. Her father was sitting up waiting for us. When I saw his face, I was glad I had a real good excuse, even though I was quite a bit bigger than him. Her mother got up and came into the front room in her housecoat. She got real upset when we told her what had happened, but her father said, he'll be home tomorrow. That kid's been going through this stage for months now. It's not just a stage, Kathy cried. You can't say this is just a stage when it's important to people, what they're feeling. Maybe he will outgrow it someday, but right now it's important. If he never comes home, it's going to be your fault. He's picking on him about silly, goofy things like his hair and flunking gym. She sat down and began to cry again. Her father just looked at her and said, honey, I know it's because you're worried that you're talking like this. Eminem will be home tomorrow. He's a sensible kid. Then why didn't you ever tell him so? Kathy sobbed irrationally. I don't think he's coming home tomorrow. He doesn't do things on the spur of the moment. He thinks things out. He's not going to just come home. By now, 2 or 3 younger kids had wandered in, dressed in their underwear, or not dressed at all. They got enough out of the conversation to gather that Eminem was gone, and they began crying too. It was a big mess, and I felt really uncomfortable. Mark was waiting out in the car, and as it was 2 in the morning, I had to go to school in a few hours. I wanted to leave, only I just didn't want to leave Kathy. I wished I could take her home with me. Her father said, Brian, thank you for your help. I think you'd better be going home. Your mother's probably worried. I could have told him that Mom never worried about Mark and me. She loved us, but let us run our own lives. But I only said, yes, sir. And I suddenly noticed that where he wasn't bald, his hair was charcoal colored, and that his eyes, though smaller with age, were the same as Kathy's and Eminem's. I thought it was strange seeing your eyes in someone else's face. I was tired, thinking kind of funny. Sorry, tears. And I had an itchy nose. Now I feel better. Everyone uptight? Asked Mark when I got back in the car. Yeah, I don't blame them. They don't have nothing to worry about, Mark said. And half the kids on the ribbon are living in someone else's car or house or garage. Shoot. I remember last summer, you and me sometimes didn't come home for weeks. We were bumming around the lake or somebody's house. Remember when Williamson rented that apartment for a couple of months with 2 other guys? I bet half the kids in town stopped there overnight. Yeah, but Eminem is just a kid. So are we. And nothing bad happens to you when you're a kid. Didn't you realize that? Yeah, youth is free from worry, I said sarcastically. You've been listening to too many adults. I don't worry. I'm never scared of nothing, and I never will be. As long as I'm a kid, you can get away with anything, I said, because that phrase came through my head whenever I really thought about Mark. Yeah, I can. He was quiet. You used to be able to. I looked at him, and suddenly it was like seeing someone across a deep pit, someone you couldn't ever reach. It was like the car had widened into the Gulf of Mexico, and I was seeing Mark through a telescope. What's happening? I said, half out loud, but Mark was asleep. Mark didn't come home the next day like his father thought he would. Kathy and I ran up and down the ribbon every night for a week, but it wasn't fun anymore because we were looking out for Eminem. Never did find him. We must have stopped 60 million little long-haired kids thinking they were Eminem, but none of them was. I began watching for him everywhere. And I got a job in a supermarket. I did a pretty good job of changing my attitude. Well, outwardly at least. I couldn't help thinking smart aleck things, but I could help saying them. Sacking groceries wasn't the most fun job in the world, but I was bringing in money. Mark was bringing in money too, more than he ever had before. I couldn't imagine him stealing all of it, so I figured he must have gone in serious for poker. I never asked him where he got it. Mom didn't either. Of course, she'd never think Mark was getting it dishonestly. Besides, none of us was in any position to turn away extra money. One night, a couple of weeks after Eminem disappeared, Mark and me went goofing around by ourselves again. It was almost as if nothing had ever felt like gulf between us. We'd never been separated by something we couldn't see. We drove up and down the ribbon, trying to pick up chicks, get into drag races, even though our car wasn't all that fast. I was kind of half-hearted about picking up chicks, too, as I was more serious about Kathy than I let on, even to Kathy herself. Hey, Mark said suddenly, look who's over there in the parking lot. It was Angela and a bunch of other chicks, her type, by the way they dress and the way they were acting. You can always tell when a girl wants to be picked up. Let's pull in, Mark said. He was smiling. All right, sure, I said, feeling with the old sense of thrill that something was up, something was going to happen. We pulled into the parking lot, and immediately we were surrounded by girls. Out of the way, I said superiorly. I want to see Angela. Brian, she yelled and then jumped for me the minute I got out of the car. Brian, oh, I'm so glad to see you. She was pretty drunk. I let her hug me, though, catching Mark's wink. Where have you been keeping yourself, Angel? How's married life? So remember, last time we saw, she got married right after the whole Charlie getting shot thing. Again, how old is Angela? So now we're going to find out how her life is now that she's married. How's married life? She let go with a string of swear words, which told me pretty well what she thought of married life, her in-laws, and her husband. I never cared about him anyway. I thought I was having I thought I was, but I wasn't. And that's the only reason I married him, the louse. She was half crying now between obscenities. You're the only boy I ever cared about, Brian. Sure, I said. So they don't really come right out and say it, but they put between the lines. Why did she get married? Yeah, she thought she was pregnant, which is the only reason she got married. Then it turned out she wasn't pregnant. So now she's 16 and married to a guy that she doesn't even care about because of that choice. But don't worry, it's even worse. Sure, I said. I still hated the sight of her. She was as beautiful as ever, so striking. She could have been a movie star. I remembered all the trouble she'd caused, compared her to Kathy, and hated her. I let her hug me and bawl into my shirt front because, well, Mark was winking at me. Angel, let's go for a ride. You and Brian can talk over old times. Maybe I can get some more booze for you. Sure, Angela said, always eager for free booze. I couldn't believe she was that glad to see me. We drove around for a while, Angela telling us all of her problems. Her husband didn't even have a job. Her brothers were both in jail, that being Tim and Curly, the one who talked about before. Her old man was drunk all the time, and her father-in-law was always slapping her bottom. So father-in-law being the dad of her husband is the one that's now hitting on her and smacking her in the tushy. So again, all levels of awkward and awful. I'd always taken her family for granted. They weren't so different from most of the families in our neighborhood. But now that I'd seen Kathy's home, not rich, not much more than poor, but where everybody cared about each other and tried to act like decent people, the picture Angela was painting was making me sick. I could hardly stand for her to be hanging onto my arm. At Mark's request, I pulled into a parking lot across the street from the liquor store. Mark got out, disappeared. He was looking for somebody to buy the booze. You can't legally buy booze until you're 21 in this state, so we always have to get some old guy to buy it for us, usually somebody's big brother. If you can't come up with one of them, there was bound to be some rummy hanging around who was willing to buy it if you gave him a little extra to buy something for himself. I sat in the car and talked to Angela, who had completely given up to tears. It was the first time since I'd known her that I'd seen her cry. She was a tough little chick. Her eye makeup was running all over my shirt front. That didn't bother me as much as the way it was running down her face in dark streaks. She almost looked like she was behind bars. Mark hopped back into the car with some rum, and we got a carton of pop at a one-stop store and took off to the lake. It was too cold to go swimming, but the lake is always a good place to go. There's a mess of them, lakes that is, around here. I get so sick, Angela was saying. I feel like I can't take it anymore. Life is just lousy. I'm lousy. Everything is lousy. I can't stand it at home. I can't stand it at school. I can't stand it anywhere. I always thought, hell, I can get what I want. What I want, everybody can go to hell, but it doesn't work that way, right? I can't go right along with them. I'm already there. Tomorrow should be tough again. Hard as rock, Angela Shepherd. Tonight, she was tired and drunk. We passed out. Sorry, she passed out on my shoulder. We were stopped on a little dirt road, one of the millions that run along the lake and through the woods surrounding it. Mark sighed. Oh, I thought she was never going to shut up. I sure hate to see gutsy chicks break. Destroys my faith in human nature. You're never going to break, huh? Nope. For this next part, this represents Angela. I had to find a girl who was really pretty with long dark hair because that's going to play a role in this next part. Yep. Pay attention to the fact that it's very long hair. Nope, Mark said. He pulled a pair of scissors out of his pocket. I picked these up at the one stop. He reached over and began cutting off Angela's beautiful, long, blue-black hair, close to her head. Whoa, 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 you ain't going to cut all off, I said, stunned. Yeah, I am. Setting up Curtis like she did, getting me cracked like that, She could have had me killed. Oh, yeah, that's right, I said. And suddenly, all the hatred I'd had for Angela, for her brother Curly, for everything she stood for came back. I sat and watched Mark cut off all her hair. He tied it all up neatly when he had finished the job. It was a couple of feet long. Even with her hair gone and her makeup streaked all over her face, Angela was a beauty. She only would be. A lot of good hair. I switched out to a new picture. We drove home about 3 that morning. Mark and me finished what was left of the rum. We dumped Angela and her hair in her front yard. She never even woke up. I didn't think she remembered getting into the car with us, but her girlfriends would probably tell her that. She'd know who cut off her hair. So again, when they're done with her, they literally just throw her in her front yard, sprawled out, and then just throw the hair on top of her and just leave her out there. She wouldn't do anything about it though, because one thing I knew about old Angel, she was proud. She'd say she had her hair cut at the beauty shop. She'd say, I was sick of all that hot mess. She'd never lie on. I started crying on the way home from Angela's. Mark had to drive. Sometimes rum affects me like that. I was still crying when we got home. We sat on the porch and I cried while Mark patted me on the back and said, hey, take it easy, man. It's going to be all right. I finally quit, sat sniffing, wiping my eyes on my shirt sleeve. It was a quiet night. I was thinking, yeah, Mark said, in the same easy, concerned voice. What were you thinking, Brian? About that kid, Mike, from the one in the hospital. We talked to him a couple of times, you remember? Yeah, I remember. He got beat up trying to do a black chick a favor. How come things always happen like that? It seems like you let your defenses down for 1 second and then you get it. How? You care about somebody, you give a damn for the person, you get blasted. How come it's like that? You got me, Brian. I never thought about it. I guess because nothing bad has ever happened to me. I looked at him. Nothing bad had ever happened to him. His parents killed each other in a drunken fight when he was 9, and he saw it all. He'd been arrested for auto theft. He saw Charlie shot and killed. He'd nearly been killed himself by some punk kid he'd never seen before. Nothing bad had ever happened to him. And I knew what he meant. Those things hadn't left a mark on him because he was Mark the Lion. Mark, different from other people. Beautiful Mark who just didn't give a damn about anyone except me. I suddenly knew why everyone liked Mark, why everyone wanted to be his friend. Who hasn't dreamed of having a pet lion to stand between you and the world? Golden, dangerous Mark. You're my best friend, Mark, I said, still a little drunk. Just like a brother to me. I know, buddy, he said, patting me again. Take it easy, man. Don't start bawling again. I sure wish I knew where Eminem was, I said, and tears were running down my face again in spite of myself. I like that dumb little kid. I wish I knew what happened to him. He's okay. Take my word for it. You know where he is. He's been gone all these weeks, and you know where he is. Yeah, I do. If he wanted to come home, he'd come home. So don't worry. You gotta tell me where he is, Mark. I said, knowing I sounded like a drunken nitwit, but I couldn't help it, seeing how I was, so drunk. Sure, Brian. All right, don't cry. I'll take you there tomorrow, but don't count on him coming home. Yeah, he's awful worried about him. You know, Mark, I think I'm going to marry Kathy. Come on, man, Mark said, trying to pull me to my feet. Yeah, marry Kathy. Be sure and name all the kids after me. Let's go to the house. Try and be quiet, okay? You don't want the old lady to see you like this. Should have known better than to let you drink all that rum. Wait, didn't you drink any? No, I was just drinking plain Coke. I drank all that rum by myself. I couldn't believe it. I'm not much of a boozer. Yeah, I mean, except for what Angela drank. Mark was helping me up the steps. I was weaving back and forth. If he hadn't been hanging on to me, I would have dropped flat on my face. Oh, poor Angel. We should have left her alone, Mark. That was a mean thing to do. Cut off her hair like that. Oh, God, please, Brian, for Pete's sake, don't cry anymore. He half dragged me into our room and pushed me onto my bed. I passed out. I could hear Mark moving around the room, feel him taking my shoes off, pulling the blanket up over me. It was all as if he was real far away, or I was way down inside myself. What'd I ever do to deserve you, Mark? Pull a thorn out of your paw? Fine, buddy. You are as wiped out as I've ever seen you. I think you better shut up and go to sleep. The thorn paw thing goes back to Aesop's fables, those things that we talked about. There's an old Aesop's fable that was based on the whole mouse pulling a thorn out of the lion's paw, and then the lion becomes the mouse's friend because he helped him. That's what he's referring to, the fact that Mark was this really scary person. Brian did a good thing for him, and that's why Mark. When did we start running around together, Mark? You remember? We've always been friends, man. I can't remember when we weren't. How come your old man shot your mother? I mean, she shot him back, but it was too late because she was dying anyway. I really was drunk because I'd never mentioned that to Mark in all the years I'd known him. Actually, it was me. I was under the porch. I could hear him real plain. And the old man was saying, I don't care. I ain't never ever seen a kid with eyes that color. Nobody on my side of the family has eyes that color. Not on yours either. And my old lady says, that's right. Why should he look like anybody in your family? He ain't yours. And then they start yelling, and I hear this sound like a couple of firecrackers. And I think, well, I can go live with Brian and his old lady. Did you really think that? I opened my eyes, and the room was turning around slowly. It was making me sick. Something was making me sick. Yeah, I did. I didn't like living at my home. I got sick of them yelling and fighting all the time. I got whipped a lot, too. I remember thinking, this will save me the trouble of shooting them myself. I don't like anybody hurting me. I'm glad you came to live with us. Yeah, me too. Now, really, better shut up, man. Another quick pause. Did you catch why his parents shot each other? What is it? Yeah, so the fact is, yeah, so she cheated and apparently was not hiding it. And apparently they did not get along with the shooty two thing. But Mark, not upset. But regardless, that's a lot to put on a 9-year-old. If you're 9 and then realize that your parents cheated on each other and then they shot each other and it's all because of you and that's why they're gone, that's a heavy load to put on a 9-year-old. But apparently he was planning on killing them anyway, so you know, what we're gonna do. Yeah, some home lives, we got struggles. Me too. Now, come on, you really better shut up, man. Why are you trying to shut me up? I said, making an effort to sit up. It made me even sicker, so I laid back down. You got a cigarette? Yeah, right in the old secret place. Mark pulled back his mattress and got a pack of cigarettes. He always kept an extra pack there. When we were little and didn't want mom to know we smoked, we kept our cigarettes hidden. It wasn't until much later that we found out she'd known about it all along. That plays an important role later on, that Mark keeps his cigarettes hidden underneath the bed.
He's gonna burn down the house.
It's going to play a role later on in the book. That's why I'm bringing attention to it. So you guys remember. I couldn't light my cigarette for some reason. Mark lit it for me and stuck it in my mouth. He sat back on his bed watching me, his elbows on the windowsill. I could see the end of his cigarette glowing. Charlie, you tried to help somebody out, and look what happened to him. This was connected with what he'd said about Mike somehow, but Mark followed my train of thought, just like he always had. Charlie wasn't about to let a couple of his friends get beat up by some hicks. What happened then? Well, it's just the way things turn out sometimes. Yeah, but listen, Mark, if somebody had said to him, is saving a couple of dumb kids from getting beat up worth your life? He would have said, hell no! Charlie would have said that, Mark. Sure, yeah, he would have said that, but you don't know what's coming, man. Nobody does. He sure knew he was taking a chance. Fine, he must have known those guys had guns. He knew they were rough guys. He took a chance. He got a rotten break. That's it. Doesn't make any sense. Like you getting busted with that bottle. A little harder, you would have been dead. But I ain't. This is the way it is, Brian. Angela Shepard's a tough little chick who set out to get a shy guy who didn't know she was alive. So she sweet talks some dummy into fighting for her. And I happen to be friends with Curtis. Happen to be sitting on the car with him when the dummy picks a fight with him. And I happen to be a little high. So I step in between Curtis and the punk. Now, if Angela wasn't tough, if she was a nice girl from the West Side, maybe she would have left well enough alone and just given up on Curtis. If Curtis was a playboy like you, he would have picked her up when she wanted to be picked up. If that kid wasn't so freaking dumb, he never would have taken on Curtis, who was no slouch of a fighter. Man, I can tell you that. If I'd had a date that night, I would have been somewhere else. But Brian, that ain't the way things went. You can't walk through your whole life saying if. You can't keep trying to figure out why things happen, man. That's what old people do. That's when you can't get away with things anymore. You gotta just take things as they come. Quit trying to reason them out. Man, you never used to wonder about things. You never get worried about you. You start wondering why, you get old. Lately, felt like you were leaving me, man. You used to have all the answers. I can't help it, Mark. I can't help thinking about things like Mike and Charlie and Eminem and you. It's all mixed up. I can't help it. You can help thinking about it. He leaned over his bed, reached across the short space that separated us, and yanked my cigarette out of my fingers. You're going to go to sleep and burn us alive. I remember I was going to say, no, I ain't, but I was asleep before I could get the words out. Chapter 8 is a short chapter. We're going to read it in just a second, so hang on. I am going to give you the chance to stand up. I had to get through that chapter first. Not standing yet, you eager children. Home children, nothing bad happened at all during that break. We don't have to worry about classes not going to the bathroom anymore. Chapter, now we have bad things. Ooh, so at this point, we've gotten revenge on Angela. But what's the problem with getting revenge on someone?
They do revenge on
And that's what we're going to get to with our next part.
because they suck.
Should we get revenge?
But they're doing.
And so that's where we get to go back and forth. Chapter 8, page 119. I was I'm going to give you to this guy. Back to our bagger. I was real hungover the next morning. Besides that, I had to get up early and go to work. Mark woke me up. He's like a human alarm clock. Never needed more than 5 hours of sleep a night. Me, if I didn't get at least 9 hours, I felt dead. I felt dead that Saturday morning. I mean, I wished I was anyway. I was feeling so bad that I actually stuck a loaf of bread in a grocery bag and then dropped 3 cans of soup on top of it. Bread always goes on top. The supermarket, this is like the 10 Commandments all rolled into one. It was a wonder I didn't lose my job that Saturday, like some kids are going to lose their iPads now. I carried groceries for this one young housewife type, and when I put the bags in her car, she handed me her phone number. I was feeling so bad I groaned, "Oh God, lady, you got to be kidding." Like I said, it was a wonder I didn't lose my job. It was 2 in the afternoon before the sound of the cash register quit blasting my ears, and it was quitting time before I finally felt I could eat something. This shows you how sick I was. I had a date with Kathy that night, but she had to work late. I'd pick her up at the hospital snack shop at 10. It was fine with me, as I wanted a chance to go look for Eminem. Mark knew where he was. When I got off work, I found Mark sitting in my car. I figured you'd want to hunt for Eminem. How's your head? Better? Man, don't ever let me guzzle like that again. Mark shrugged. Hey, man, you wanted to. You had to get good and drunk because I was cutting Angela's hair off and you couldn't take it. I flipped a remark that I'd said many times before, not to him. Even from my side of the car, I felt him tighten, getting ready to spring. The gulf was between us again. For some reason, I was hacked off because he didn't need to sleep 9 hours because he wasn't hungover. By the way, I'm assuming the thing he said begins with an F and ends with a U. You sound like Kathy, I said. Heaven forbid. What do you got against her anyway? What does she have against me? You're a bad influence. I don't know why I said that. Kathy sure as heck never said anything like it. Mark was quiet for a minute. Then he said something really rotten. I mean, I had it coming for what I'd said to him, but I didn't have to drag Kathy into it. I gripped the steering wheel. You want to get out of this car and have it out? You don't want to swing on me, do you? It was partly a statement, partly a request. I was quiet. Sorry, I said. I kept driving. This was as close as we ever came to having a fight. I followed the directions Mark gave me. We went into this old part of town, which used to be a really classy place, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, with these huge old houses that were probably a big deal when they were built. They just look gloomy now. Most of them are divided into flats. Flats mean an apartment that's all on one level, like there's no stairs to it. On Mark's say-so, I pulled into a driveway in front of one of them. There was a sign hanging from the porch ceiling that said love in red and green letters. He's here? I asked. I wasn't sure what was going on. Last time I was here, he was. Mark got out of the car. You could tell when somebody's familiar with the place. Mark had been here many times before. Come on. I got out of the car, wondering what in the world Mark could have been doing here. Mark didn't knock. He just opened the front door and walked in. Oh, the whole inside of the house was freaked out with posters. A girl with long, streaked blonde hair, wearing blue jeans and a paint-splattered shirt, was lying on a beat-up couch. She had the deadest, most colorless face I'd ever seen. Hello, Cat, she said to Mark. She knew him. She didn't call everybody Cat. Peace, baby, Mark said. I tried not to laugh. I mean, all right, I dig hippies, okay? I mean, they've got some great ideas, but sometimes it was funny. You freaked out? Mark said politely, as if he was saying, how are you these days? Way out, man. She was staring at the ceiling so intently that I glanced up there just to make sure the answer to the universe wasn't written across it. If it was, I couldn't see it. Maybe she could. With great, he says, freaked out. What's he asking? And her answer is, yeah, way high. Mark stepped over a stringless guitar and went upstairs. I stumbled after him, looking around. Somebody was in the kitchen singing. Each of the steps was painted a different color. It was a good effect, but they were awful dirty. Mark stepped into a bedroom. There were about 6 or 7 kids in it. One kid was lying on a bed, watching his fingernails. The others were sitting cross-legged in a circle, talking about some book. I hadn't read it, so I didn't get the conversation, but these kids were not dumb. They were all in blue jeans and old shirts and fringed vests. A couple of them were smoking grass. Hi, Cat, a guy with a beard and a flowered shirt said. I'm looking for Eminem. You seen him? Baby freak? Yeah, he ain't been around today. The kid's flying, man. He's gonna crash. You didn't let him take anything, did you? I said. This may have been against house rules, as nobody had said anything to me yet, but this place was getting on my nerves. Oh, by the way, when they say he's flying, means, again, there you go. And we're saying he's going to crash. He's gonna die. There you go.
What?
Probably going to die from overdose, something like that. There isn't any leading here, this fat chick says. We're free. I looked her over with the practiced eye of a playboy and popped off with something really good. Then I raised 2 fingers and said, peace. That seemed to earn their forgiveness because they all went back to their literary discussions. Now, the kid on the bed was painting his fingernails with green watercolor. On the way out, we passed the blonde chick. She was reading a book and smoking grass. You seen Baby Freak? She shook her head. Sorry. See you around, Cat. Even sitting up, she looked dead. When we got back to the car, I said, are you dating her? Sometimes. Like the lady said, man, they're free. Thought about that a long time. I'm the first to admit I've got hangups. I don't think I'd ever consider myself really free. But I'm not trying to consider them free either. Hey, just because it ain't your bag, don't knock it, Mark said, after we'd driven in silence for a while. I didn't say anything. Yeah, grass or rum, both are a type of high. Yeah, well, listen, man, rum, that gets you maybe a weekend in the drunk tank. Grass, that gets me 5 years in the pen. All ain't necessarily right. It's the way things are. It's puzzle. I never known Mark to smoke pot. I wondered why he was defending it. I don't smoke it, so quit worrying, Mark said, reading my mind as usual. I just don't like to see you judging people. No, kidding you. I didn't say anything. Mark was quiet. Then he said, you remember when the socials used to come through here looking for somebody to beat up? Yeah. And you remember when me and you beat up that one hippie kid in the park? Yeah. I'm a tough punk, Brian. I ain't done. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. So, real quick, on that scene, you guys know what a hypocrite is? I'm assuming it's the thing that you use to insult your parents quite often. They tell you to do it to clean your room, and their room's a complete mess. That's what Mark is saying here. He's like, listen, the socialists came over here to beat up people so they would feel better about themselves by beating up these people who were poorer than them. When we went to go beat up the hippie, we did the same thing. we were just beating up somebody who was poor than us. He's like, we were being hypocrites. He's like, so don't be a hypocrite here. You're judging these hippies because they're using a drug to get high. He's like, you're getting over a hangover because you used a drug to get high. He's like, so don't be judging other people. So that's where Mark's like, hey, I may be a dummy, but I'm not an idiot. Stop judging people. That's the whole idea is just be more relaxed and stop judging other people.
I'm not dumb, I'm stupid.
This actually not that point, yeah. I picked Kathy up at the hospital, and I didn't tell her about going to the hippie house to look for M&M. I didn't see any sense in getting her all upset. I mean, after all, I hadn't found him. We drove up and down the ribbon and then stopped by the park on the way home. This was becoming standard procedure. I was getting more and more serious about Kathy. This was really strange for me. I'd always had a love him and leave him attitude, even with Angela. I guess it was more a pride thing than a love thing. I still hadn't even told Kathy I loved her, though. It was like my never thanking Charlie for letting me use his car. It was something I just couldn't do when it meant anything. Hey, Kathy, I said, while we were on the way home, I got a ring. Would you wear it? Yeah. And that's how we started going steady. After I dropped Kathy off at her house, I headed for Terry Jones's place. I was supposed to pick up Mark there, but when I got to the house, nobody was home. Terry's parents were out of town for the weekend, which normally meant it was a party and poker time at the Joneses. I figured everybody had gone out scouting for booze and broad, so I sat down on the front steps to wait. It was a cool night, but not too cool. It was getting to be spring. It had been a real weird winter. Last fall, Mark and me thought just alike, as one person. Now we couldn't even talk. Charlie had been alive and griping about our coke bill. I'd been a hustler, both with pool and chicks. Eminem had been reading Newsweek and getting his kicks babysitting. Now, everything was different. While I was sitting there, smoking and thinking, a car pulled up. I thought it was some guys coming to party and so forth, so I didn't pay attention. The four guys were standing right in front of me before I came to and realized that the two of them were Tim and Curly Shepherd. By the way, Tim and Curly Shepherd being the brothers of Angela Shepherd. I thought you guys were in the cooler, I said pleasantly, just like I didn't know they were here for the sole purpose of stomping out my guts. We're out now, Tim said. Now he scared me. He was what I would call a rough guy. Curly was mostly mouth, but Tim backed up anything he said. He really was a hood. Now I know most people call any kid from over here on the east side a hood, but him, he really was. Yeah, I guess so, I said, still smoking, not blowing my cool. If I kept them talking long enough, maybe Mark and Terry and God knows who else would show up. You seen Angela lately? Tim said. Curly was keeping his mouth shut. Even he was awed by his big brother. There's something about Tim Shepherd. His scarred face, his fighter's slouch, the flickering of his black eyes really let you know he meant business. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I saw her over on the ribbon last night. She went for a drive with me. I decided I did not need to drag Mark into this. It was plain they were not even worried about him. No kidding. Did you know Angel got her hair cut this morning? At least that's what people say. Now she told me something different. I was sweating. I could feel it running down my back and wet in my palms, and my cigarette was shaking, so I ground it out on the porch. But I sounded calm as I said, "What's she telling you?" She says, "You got her drunk and cut her hair off. Is that the truth?" Yeah, that's the truth. And I'm sorry it happened. And I decided just to tell it straight for once, without all this hedging and playing the game. It was a rotten thing to do, man. I'm sorry. Oh, you ain't half as sorry as you're gonna be, Tim said. And the two guys I didn't know rushed me, pinned my arms, and held me while Tim and Curly took turns punching me. I passed out finally, not as soon as I hoped I would. When I came to, Mark was wiping my face off with a wet rag. "Brian, you okay? Don't move, man." I bit back a groan because I could tell there were other guys in the room. Normally, I wouldn't have to knock myself out playing the tough guy for just Mark, but I did have a rep to keep. "What happened, man? Who did this to you?" "It hurts. I said finally, but it hurt to draw the breath to say it. Something was stabbing me in the sides. My whole face was throbbing, and I couldn't open my eyes. They were swollen shut. There was a funny taste in my mouth. That's blood. You want to go to the hospital? He sounded so worried. I felt sorry for him. No, I don't want to go anywhere. I felt that if I moved, I'd fall apart. Can I stay here? I figured I was in Terry's house somewhere, and I could tell I was lying on the bed. Sure, man, you can stay here. I recognized Terry's voice. Oh, brother, you look like you've been through a meat grinder. That's what it feels like, too, I said, even though this witticism cost me more stabbing pains in my sides. You know, reputation's a hell of a thing to have. You gotta kill yourself to keep it. I'll call the old lady, and we'll go look up the shepherds. Mark, I want to talk to you first, my wife. Sure, buddy. Hey, clear out, guys. And because he was Mark, they obeyed him. Listen, okay, it hurts like hell to talk. I'm only going to say it once, and I don't want to argue. Yeah, it's sitting on my desk right there. Sure, Mark's voice sounded puzzled. I wish I could see him. I knew he wasn't going to dig what I had to say. I could tell he was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I reached for where his hand should have been and caught it. I don't want anybody to fight the shepherds. What? I don't want to keep this up. This getting even jazz. It's stupid, and I'm sick of it, and it keeps going in circles. I've had it. So if you're planning any get even mugging, forget it. I was trying to keep my voice from trembling with pain, but not only did talking hurt my sides, it was killing my face. I got you, Brian, Mark said after a silence. You just take it easy. He left to call Mom, and I heard him yelling at the rest of the guys to keep the record player down. He stayed all night on the other side of the bed, guarding me. Ethan?
I think that's what we did.
What movie?
The Outsider.
Yeah. When I was typing it in there, as I tried to find pictures for you guys, I did the one I typed in like 4 greasers or 4 thugs or something like that, and it popped up with this picture. I'm like, perfect, there's 4 of them. And then I was like, ooh, greasers beating a kid up. And it came up with that picture. I'm like, perfect again. And so it was like all kinds of winning from there. So I'm going to read a bit more to give you guys less homework because your checkpoint's page 159. And so that's 3 chapters. There's 3 major things that are going to happen in each of the next 3 chapters. Like in this one, we had the whole cutting off all the hair of Angela, and then we have him getting stomped into the ground. In the next 3 chapters, there's 3 more major things. Chapter 10 is the one that made me cry for the ones you get there. The major thing that you get to in chapter 10, that's the one that broke my heart. And then again, in the very last thing in chapter 11, that's another thing that made me cry. The thing that's coming up in chapter 9 was bad and upset me, but was not a thing that necessarily made me cry as much. Owen? Yeah. But I mean, a lot of it will go back up. It's just gonna be a matter of as I go through, it'll allow me to sort of thin some things out. But for me, a lot of it's gonna be memories. It's gonna bring me happiness because I can connect all these things to different kids. So as I take them down, I'm gonna remember that kid, and that's gonna bring me happy thoughts. So it's gonna be sad to have to change my room, but at the same time happy because I remember the kids who gave me those things. Owen. I like to make, that's actually part of the stories I talk about next week. And so I like to make you guys become better people. And so the torturing of kids is just part of that process. And in all honesty, part of my big speech I give you guys coming up in a week is we talk about me torturing kids and how that connects to me. And that's actually one of the talks I give you guys. It's the few we're going to get to. Cheerio.
Do you have to take down everything in your room, or just like the
Everything that I do not want to have thrown away has to leave my room. Everything in the cabinets, everything underneath things, everything in desks, like everything. They are ripping out the ceiling, the floors, the wall, the carpet, like everything in this room is going to get torn down, burned, and redone. So yeah, like including like even my whiteboards and the chalkboard, like they're redoing everything. They're taking it down to the bare everything.
wait, yeah?
Yes. So I get to have the same room. It's just gonna be the same room with newer stuff.
Wait, yeah, take down your whiteboard too, or
Yeah, no gym room.
They'll take down the whiteboards. I don't have to worry about those.
There's no gym room.
What?
They-
Am I switching with the gym room?
Yeah, like on the room.
Oh, I noticed the computer lab is where I'm going to be going for the beginning of next year. Because I have to teach from they're going to turn the computer lab into 2 classrooms, and Mrs. Randall and I are going to share that. So I'm going to have like a little tiny room.
Fourth grade.
So yeah, it's going to be all kinds of stuff.
So bad.
The good news is it's only for a couple weeks, like until like the second week of September. Then I get to come back to my room.
I'm sorry, they started paper.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's like tearing paper over the wall.
Middle school kids being bad, no.
No,
that's a-
it's- Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was in their school and we were all in the gym and there was one grade class that was just in their own room, like having a good time.
Because they were smart kids.
It wasn't fair at all. Because we'd be like
Yeah.
silent reading and then all the smart, all the other
We'll hear
classes
sound.
would just start dying, laughing, and like screaming. And I couldn't pay attention, so I leaned over and talked to my friend while they were laughing, and then I'd be the one to get in trouble.
And one teacher,
Dare those kids have
and
fun.
one teacher would always yell at his students and then get so hollow.
Right.
Yeah.
I had dry.
Oh, right.
That was just ruin the whole day.
Oh yeah, I forgot. So you guys were there when they did that whole remodeling thing,
Yeah.
weren't you?
Yeah, that school in
Yeah.
general.
And that because
It was
my
so bad.
it was right after my kid left because Jack was there through 4th grade, and then when Jack went to 5th grade, when they remodeled it for you guys, so it was like while you guys were there.
So do
So-
you think
Yeah.
the yellow smart kids, like this?
Well, that's what you do. Everyone likes the smart kids.
Is your daughter there?
No, Jack is my daughter.
Oh, no.
Jack goes by boy
Oh, she's
now.
in it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's going on. So
Wait,
that,
how many kids do you have?
just 2.
Oh, just two?
Yeah, 8th grade and a sophomore. I'm only collecting the 2. I didn't try to go for the whole set.
Oh, you need 151 for the whole set.
I did. I felt like I just kept throwing them back though.
And
Owen.
One more time.
At the hospital, if you didn't like me, just strap them up with them.
No, before we got.
My family had a kid every single year. Yeah, not even joking. So I went to BCE,
Your focus.
my cousin, she's a sophomore in college,
Mhm.
and then my other cousin is a sophomore in high school. What is it? Freshman, 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade. My other cousin is in 1st grade, and then my.
I'm assuming you mean like extended family, not just your family. You're talking like the-
yeah.
yeah. That's what confused. We thought you were going full Eminem on us, and Eminem like wanted to have 10 kids, and you're like, I have 10. So that would make more sense as far
And
as.
they're all girls, besides the 2 younger.
And you
You're a girl?
Yeah.
did not want to assume.
You don't discriminate.
Yeah, we all. I love, no hate. So Monday, I'm going to talk, because the 3 big things that happened. We're going to talk about the big things that happened in 9, 10, and 11. Then my goal is to give you the rest of that class period. Hopefully half of it will be like our break, which apparently now you guys can't leave the room for. And then we'll take tests. And then Wednesday of next week, I start telling you my first bad choice story. And we'll take a break. And then I'll tell you my second bad choice story. And then Monday of that last week, I get to my last story. And then I'll also get to my big speech where I talk about me torturing kids and stuff like that. Next week is our last full week of school. Why do I what, Owen?
Why do you like do your? what's it called?
That's actually part of the speech I give. I talk about. So my goal is that I didn't used to end the school year this way. I used to end it the way a lot of teachers do, which is showing movies at the end of the year, because teaching is exhausting. It is. Absolutely. I don't disagree. Which is why I don't do it anymore. But the problem I had was I had a bunch of high school kids who kept coming back and talking to me, and I would have conversations with them. And that's when I found out that for many of them, it was 8th grade where they started having all of these big life-changing things, drugs coming up and being friendly and Zeusy things. And so I was like realizing if you say so, but it happened. We have 7th graders who are doing it also. But I realized if I want to have an impact on you guys, then I need to try and pass along information. So that's why I started changing it and telling stories. That you did. Home, children. I'm done now. You can go away and go hide or whatever it is you go do.